What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be talking about suppressors in Modern Warfare 2, since we don't have a traditional Call of Duty minimap in this game, and therefore I've had a lot of people asking, what's the point of suppressors? Are they completely worthless in this game, or are there actually some benefits to using a suppressor? And diving right into it, like I said, there is no traditional Call of Duty minimap in this game, and what that means is even if you're firing an unsuppressed weapon without any kill streaks in the air, you're not going to be showing up on the enemy's minimap as a red dot for firing your gun. And traditionally, that wasn't the case. If you had an unsilenced gun, every time you pulled that trigger and fired the gun, you would show up as a red dot for enemy players, whereas if you used a suppressor, then that would prevent you from showing up on the radar by firing your gun. This changed drastically with Modern Warfare 2019, and that has essentially carried over to Modern Warfare 2, so let's have a look at the minimap and compass interaction first, both with and without a suppressor. And let's start this off with a default scenario with no kill streaks in the air, no UAV, anything like that, and we're just focusing on the minimap. In this scenario, if you fire an unsuppressed gun, like I said, you will not show up as a red dot for enemy players. And it's the same story if you're using a suppressor as well, so there's no benefit there. Next, let's have a look at the compass, again in a scenario where there are no kill streaks or anything in the air. And with this, when you fire an unsuppressed gun, you will be showing up as a red diamond on that compass for enemy players, whereas if you're using a suppressor, you don't show up on that compass. Now, a big thing to point out here, though, is, at least in my eyes, the compass provides completely redundant information because you can already tell the exact direction that enemies are firing their gun from just by using your ears. You might not get the distance nailed down perfectly, but the compass doesn't provide that distance information either. So, like I said, at least from my perspective, I see the compass as being totally redundant. So while there is technically a benefit to using a suppressor here over an unsuppressed gun when it comes to the compass, in my opinion, this really isn't much of a benefit. So far, it's not looking too good for suppressors. However, the true benefit of a suppressor in this game really starts to come out when the enemy has a UAV in the air, which is happening quite a bit in Modern Warfare 2. I would argue with the way the perk system is currently laid out, the UAV is absolutely the best kill streak in the entire game. And with this, when the enemy has a UAV up and you fire an unsuppressed gun, you will now show up as a dot on the minimap. In addition to the compass, you're still showing up there as well. And this is even if you have the ghost perk equipped. So this has nothing to do with the UAV actually sweeping you. It's just the fact that that UAV is in the air now makes it so unsuppressed fire will be showing up on the minimap. Whereas with suppressors, in that same situation where the enemy gets a UAV in the air, if I've got a suppressor on my gun, I will not be showing up as a dot on the minimap when I fire my gun. Now, if I don't have Ghost on or it hasn't charged up yet, I will still be showing up on the enemy's minimap when the UAV sweeps me. I just won't be showing up because I'm firing my gun. So as a result, when it comes to the minimap interaction, suppressors aren't necessarily useless in this game. Like I said, UAVs are very powerful and prevalent in the game, and in certain lobbies, the enemies are going to have a UAV up in the air basically the entire match, just non-stop. And in those situations, it can be beneficial to be using a suppressor. However, when you also combine that with the way this charging up perk system works with Ghost as an ultimate perk, early in a match, I would say suppressors are a lot less relevant because when an enemy gets a UAV up in the air, sure, you're not going to be showing up for firing your gun, but you're still going to be showing up on that minimap every time it sweeps you. And I do think that creates a very strange dynamic that it's such a drastically different experience at the beginning of a match compared to the end of the match. And this also significantly limits any sort of stealth play early on. That's kind of a topic for a different video, but I do think that perk system is insanely flawed and introduces so many new issues that didn't exist in the past. But that's not the end of this video. There is one other factor to consider with suppressors, and this is the actual sound profile in-game. How easy is it for enemies to pinpoint just through audio where you're firing from in relation to an unsuppressed weapon? And the first thing I wanted to test here is the range at which you can hear suppressed fire, because in Modern Warfare 2019, after 100 meters, it was literally inaudible. At 99 meters away, you could hear a suppressor being fired, but the moment you got to 101 meters, there was literally no audio playing whatsoever. And I wanted to see if it was similar in this game, and I did manage to find a line of sight over 100 meters here, which is very rare, by the way, in the 6v6 maps at least. And if you listen very closely in this clip here, you can still hear the suppressor beyond 100 meters. It's just extremely faint. Have a listen for yourself. So that's a little bit different than Modern Warfare 2019, although I would say that's faint enough that in an actual game, you're likely not going to be picking up on those audio cues unless it's like a 1v1 situation. And also, at least for 6v6 multiplayer, a character that's 100 meters away from you is generally not going to be a threat because it's highly unlikely they'll ever have a line of sight on you at that range anyway. I just wanted to point out the limits here. And I guess we should compare that against an unsuppressed gun at the same range, so have a listen to that one. As you can probably tell, it's much more audible when it's unsuppressed. It's actually kind of hard to miss that audio, even at 100 meters. But again, at that distance for 6v6, it's not super relevant. Now to be extra thorough here, I'm going to play a couple clips. First up with a suppressor, slowly inching toward that target as they're firing a suppressed gun. And then right after that, I'm going to play it with an unsuppressed gun. So you guys can hear the difference, and you can focus on that range value as well as I'm moving closer to the target. So there you go, that should give you a pretty good indication of the sound differences. Honestly, in my opinion, when it comes to 6v6 multiplayer at least, I typically have no problem whatsoever pinpointing the location of a person using a suppressor anytime they're actually a threat to me in the match. Sure, it's noticeably louder when they're not using a suppressed gun, and it's definitely going to be more obvious when they're firing, but I think over the years I've also sort of trained myself to focus extra hard on suppressed fire because in the past it wouldn't show up on the minimap, and therefore you had to have sort of extra awareness using your ears. And as a result, when it comes to the sound difference in the match, I honestly don't feel like there are too many benefits to using a suppressor. Now, you may disagree with that point, and that's totally fine, but at least for me, the only real benefit to using a suppressor is when the enemies have a UAV in the air and when you have the ghost perk charged up. At that point, you can ensure that you're always staying off of the enemy's minimap unless they have an advanced UAV in the air. But unfortunately, at least in the game's current states, that's going to be limited to basically the second half of the match. And that's maybe even something you might want to consider changing on the fly. Maybe you want to start your matches with an unsuppressed gun, and then once you eventually get your ultimate perk charged up, then maybe you want to swap over to a suppressor so you can play with a full stealth build, minus footsteps, of course. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's video covering the suppressors in Modern Warfare 2. While they're definitely not nearly as useful as many previous Call of Duty games, they definitely still have some utility in the game, just in certain situations though. And with that, this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What do you think about the current way that they're balancing the minimap and suppressors, as well as I guess we can throw in the ghost perk here since those are really related to each other quite a bit. Are you generally happy with the way that they've handled these areas? Or would you prefer a different method, like perhaps a traditional minimap, or at the very least, a traditional perk system? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.